and welcome back to Dicebreaker, where today we played a game called Fort.
Lies! We actually played it last week.
We played it at PAX East. That's fine though. This is another offering from Later Games. I don't have the designer's name off by hand, is that a thing that humans say? But this was another title with gorgeous art from Kyle Ferrin. It is very much it's a different offering to what they've put out so far, Later Games.
I've not played many Later Games except for Vast.
So yeah, so they've got the two Vast games. They've got Root, they've got Oath, which is on the way. Yeah. I'm not sure because they're relatively new, right? As far as I'm aware, they're not that old. This is the least interesting part of the conversation, so let's skip past it. What did you think of Fort?
I really liked Fort. So we sat down at PAX East to play this game, and it was very much still like a prototype, wasn't it? So like the cards were quite flimsy and whatever else, but it looked like the design was already like very much there, like the drawings and stuff like that on the cards. And we were sat down and he told us kind of the generic idea of the game, that you play as kids who are trying to recruit as many best friends as you can, and you do this by like using pizza and toys as ways to trade, and like kind of you've got like two best friends that never leave your side, but then there's other friends that you're trying to like gather, and if you don't play with your friends, they just hang out in your yard and like other people can steal your friends. It's just like the theme is so cute, and it kind of reminds me of like those Nickelodeon days from the 90s, like Ed, and Eddie style.
Kids
like,
Next Door, that kind of.
Yeah, all that.
It's very much like, it's that sort of like, it's the neighborhood, and it's all the local kids who are like knocking on each other's doors and be like, do you want to come play and stuff? Which is really sweet, and I don't think I've ever seen that kind of theming in a game before.
I haven't.
Not to say that it doesn't exist, but it's never like caught my attention before. One of my sort of favorite things about this is that like this is a deck builder, which normally means that unless we're sharing a shop, I don't care what's in your deck. I couldn't give a damn. Apart from the fact that you're using it against me, I'm looking at my own deck, I'm building my own thing. The best part about this, and you sort of hinted at it when we were talking about the theme there, but like you're drawing a hand of cards at the end of your turn, and then on every other person's turn, you can use your cards to try and like piggyback on their actions. So every card has an action that everyone does, and then an action that only you can do. So if you can match their suit, you can discard one of your cards to try and do what they're doing. And when we first got taught the game, I was like, oh, you don't want to do that because then you don't have as much cards in your hands, you have less options. But you're actually kind of encouraged to do as many things as you can from other people's turns, so that when you spend the cards on your turn, you've got as little left in your hand as possible. Because anything that you still haven't used are kids who you're friends with who you haven't played with, and they wait in your yard because they turned up to play and you didn't play with them, which means that other people can steal things from your deck.
They can kind of like other people who are playing essentially are coming into your yard and being like, and just seeing these like lonely kids who are not being played with and being like, come on, play with me.
Yeah, we'll play with you, it's fine. Which is because like at the end of everyone's turn, they do a recruit action, which means that they can either get one from the display, which is like the stuff that's actually coming from the deck, or like we said, they can steal from other people's decks, which is genius.
It's great.
Yeah, and like immediately when we were told we could do that, you were like, yeah, I'm stealing yours, Will. So I was like, oh, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's very much like, it puts so much more onus on what you're doing with your hand.
Yeah, because the important thing is on your turn, when you're playing your cards, you can only play the same suit. So if I have like, I can't remember what the suits are called, but if I remember like the colors.
Oh, there was like glue and skateboards and money for like the rich kids.
Yeah.
And like other things.
So I remember glue was yellow. So if you, for example, had 3 glue cards in your hand and then like a blue one and a red one, you probably want to play those 3 yellow ones, because any that you don't play are the ones that go into your yard. And because you can't mix which colors you use, you essentially want to try and play as many as you can, depending on what they do.
A lot of the cards, but not all of them, basically can be multiplied by the amount of cards you play at once, right? So like, say that you have a card that says, I pick up 1 resource, it might say X resource, and then just show the suit on the card. So that means that you can play that card, which is already the suit, so you get 1. Then you can pair it with like up to like 3 or 4 others.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're getting 4 or 5 resources instead. It's also that kind of like it's not just the fact that the cards that you don't use are also sort of tantalizing to the other players, because, like I said before, every card has an action that everyone around the table is able to do. Which means if they have that suit in their hand, they can play it in order to piggyback on your action. Which means that if you're putting down a card which is like helping other people, you need to be really careful about when you do that. So suddenly you find cards where it does that action, but only on the personal side of the card, which means that you can be a bit more smart about it, but it also means they're slightly less powerful because they're less open to others. It's really smart. Like there's so many little bits where, like, normally it would seem so abstract, but the way that it's like, because this is a game that already existed as like a little limited print run, sort of like artisan design or something.
Oh, did it?
By the original designer.
Oh.
And then it got picked up by later, who like they did like a sort of like retooling of it to put it in the new theme. But yeah, literally every little bit of it, I'm like, that makes perfect sense in the framework that it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's sweet because like those things that you pick up, like the toys and the pizza, which are like the goods that you the resources that you can gain from playing different cards, they go into like this little track that you have, and you can only hold, I think, is it 4 of each?
Yes.
4 or 6. Anyway, you can only hold so many of those. But then you've also got a backpack, and you can move stuff from there into your backpack, and they're kind of like, it means that you can hold more things, but also there's like cards that means you can steal or like copy other people's backpacks. And then the kind of the main goal of the game is obviously to build a fort, which is what the game is called. But depending on the size of your fort, you can like do more things and have more space for things.
Yeah, so they had like, there's not only does your backpack get bigger with every fort level, but yeah, you've got the lookouts. And the lookouts are in your fort, sort of like being able to use on every turn. So if you've got, for example, 3 glue cards in your lookout, when you play that glue card that says, 1 resource per glue card, you include those, which means you can bank in if you sort of specialize in one suit. But the more that you have of one suit, the less that your opponents have of it, which means that you're less able to piggyback on their actions as well. So it's really, really like sort of like every single part of it felt really smart, really fluid. And there was so many added elements of depth that didn't require you to learn new things.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that they were clever with what they'd already presented to you in a way that made it sort of give you other options and other angles to consider what they're already using.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really lovely.
Yeah, the great thing with the game is that it very much like does its theme very well. So the fact that like the whole, you're a kid, like recruiting friends, like we talked about briefly about the artwork at the beginning, and like, I just like vaguely remember some of the characters' names. Like one of the glue cards I remember were like twins called Icky and Sticky.
Yeah.
Which again, like just brings you back to those like Nickelodeon.
Yeah, it was so like jovial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, and we were talking to the person who had sort of like done a lot of the art direction and design on the new sort of later games version. And he was telling us that Kyle Ferrin, the artist, asked for loads of baby photos of all the staff.
So it's actually
they could
the
draw.
staff?
Yeah. So they could look at a card and be like, yeah, that's me as a kid. Which is really nice.
It's really sweet. It's
really
like a little
personal.
Easter egg that they've included in there. And I love stuff like that. It's like that they're all, or not all of the cards, but a lot of them are based on real people who like work for the company, which is just such a lovely touch, I think.
Yeah.
I really like it.
And there's loads, like, as we're talking about the theme as well, like there's loads of little card interactions which like allow you to put them into context as well. So it's like you've got a kid in your deck who looks really mean and angry, and he can chase other kids away from other people's hands or something like that. So it's like, oh yeah, you get to like destroy this card, it's out of the game forever because he got bullied by the card that you played.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you gain like 2 resources or something. It's like, oh my god, I just stole some kid's lunch money. Like,
What was
it's
the
really
card?
good.
There was one where there was a kid, and I think he was like one of the creatives in the team, and he was holding like up was it a picture or something that said bums, and we all thought that was really funny. And I can't remember his name, but it was that was probably my favorite card in the whole
Yeah,
game.
I really like the best friends as well, which you talked about at the start. So like
Yes.
you've got 2 cards in your hand, which everyone has the same abilities on them, but I think maybe the art's slightly different for them.
Yeah, I think that the art might be different, but also obviously the fact that, like, if I'm playing red, those cards are red, and so I think they're crayon cards in that case. Or like if you're playing yellow, they'll be glue cards.
Right.
So it means that automatically you're like stronger in one suit.
Yeah. So basically, they have these little stars on them, which means that if you don't use it from your hand on your turn, instead of going into the yard, they go into your discard pile.
Yeah, 'cause they're your best
Your best
friends.
friends never leave you.
Never leave
It's
you.
great. And then there's also the fact that like when you reach certain parts of the fort level, you add on new elements. So
yeah.
it starts really simple, you just grabbing your cards, but then when you reach fort level 1, all of a sudden you introduce like a special power that you have, and they could be one-shot powers or things that stay with you. So like I think mine was the fact that I could use other people's lookouts as my own or something like that. I can't remember. Or whenever somebody else added a lookout, I could as well, something like that. And then there were sort of like one-shot ones where it's like, play this to immediately take another turn or something like that. And then the level after that, you got your secret objectives as well. So it might be have the most of one colour suit, or the one that I picked up because I thought it was interesting, but also realised I could not complete it at all when I picked it up. There was one called Loner, which is literally, if you have no best friends in your deck, then you get extra points. Because there are cards which allow you to trash things in your deck.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really, really clever. Like every single, like, normally I'm really impressed with a game's theme, but there's still a few things where I'm like, oh, well, okay, that really doesn't make any sense. But this, like, I was struggling to find a single thing where I wasn't like, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I love this.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really looking forward to it coming out. I can't remember, did they say?
I think it's coming out in the summer.
Yes, he did say
This is also quite interestingly, or well, if you're a nerd like me, this is quite interestingly the first later game which hasn't been kickstarted. This is just straight up just going to be released. I think from what he was telling us, they were very much sort of like keen for this to be like an introduction to their catalogue kind of thing, because it was way easy to learn than most of the stuff they put out. Like obviously like Vast and Root, they're super like deep games with lots and lots of elements to them. Whereas this was very much like, okay, deck builder, here's how you do it, read your thing to do your turn, and then you're good to go. We played this as we were waiting to see the game that we came to see, which was Oath.
I was just going to say, because I've played Vast and I've played Oath, obviously, because we played it at the show. And I've never played Root, which I'm very sad about, actually. But anyway, but yeah, so that Fort was my first ever experience, well, after Vast, which I don't like to count because let's not talk about it. But I really, really liked Fort. And then we went on to Oath and like compared to Fort, and also like it was a bit later in the day and everything else. But I was like, oh my God. Like, is Oath similar to Root in terms of
It's very much a Cole Worley game, who's the same designer. Like, he has a very, like, you can tell when you're playing a game made by him because it's very much like, whoa, okay, Jesus, this is smart. Like, what is happening here? Like, they're very sort of like complex, like deep games with lots of intricate systems and stuff. And that's very much been like the sort of staple for the games they put out so far, because even Vast, which was, I think, their first title, not the one that we played, but the one before, the Crystal Caverns, that was a similar thing where it was like, it was completely asymmetric and everyone had different rules and it was quite complicated to learn. But once again, it was like, it's that same sort of like family of games where it's like, they're really heavy, they look gorgeous, but like they're difficult to get into. So they've very much been like, we want a game which has that same gorgeous artwork from Kyle, but you can play in an instant. You know? And I think this is going to be a really good sort of like introduction for a lot of people into this sort of like this world of games, which is really nice. But it's brilliant. I can't wait to get it.
I can't wait.
This is obviously a preview, so this is just what we played. We don't know if it's going to change, but I would doubt that there's all that much that needs to be swapped around. I would say that it's just sort of balancing at this point.
Yeah, no, it seemed like it was pretty much there, I think. Yeah. I reckon like when it comes out, we should do a Let's Play.
We should do a Let's Play.
I just want to play it again, pretty much.
But it was that thing of like, we were waiting to see Oath, which I was absolutely like chomping at the bit to see, because all the things I've been reading about it, I was like, this sounds amazing, sounds so interesting, so in depth. But like, we played that just as we were waiting because they wanted to show it to us. And then afterwards, we could not stop talking about Fort. We were just like, oh my God, Fort was so good. I think it's slightly unfair because Oath seems like the kind of game you need to play a few times to really get into the heart of. But like, yeah, it just jumped out from the crowd for us. It was really, really
big time. It's got that whole like nostalgia thing. Like it's, and I think it's one of those games as well, like especially if you compare it to some of the other later games I've played, that it's probably a bit more like family friendly, so you probably could play it with like, maybe not like super young kids, but you probably like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, depending obviously on the child, but which is quite nice.
Good intro to deck building as well.
Yes.
Because obviously Star Realms is one of your favourite games, like, and that is, you could see the comparisons between it, where Star Realms we played on the channel. If you're not aware, it's another deck building game. If you're not aware what deck building is, it's basically you start with a small deck and then you gradually sort of purchase things to shuffle into it, and then you keep using those cards. There were similarities between those where it was like, you know, oh, like here's the display and I'm grabbing stuff. Whereas in
And
Star
there's
Realms,
factions and stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, yeah.
But whereas in Star Realms, you're just like, all right, here's my hand. I'm just doing all the things that it shows me to.
Yeah, and you don't affect each other. Other than,
you're hitting each other. That's
yeah.
about it. Whereas with this, I was very much like, oh, what do I want to do with this? Like sometimes we were sat there like, oh man, if I play that card, then it's really good. But then I'm leaving one of my best cards out for somebody to grab.
Yeah.
If I play this one, it's good, but I'm not going to get as much value from it if I did on another turn. And yeah, really, really, really fun. Really, really good. So that is Fort by Lida Games. I don't have the designer's name on hand, but give it a Google. We'll have a link in the description for more details. If you enjoyed this video, then what can they do, Alex Lilies?
You can check out the videos that should be on the screen right about now. There's plenty to choose from. You can also hit the subscribe button if you like. There should be a lovely pink button in the middle of the screen. And if you'd like to be notified of any future videos, you can also hit the bell button. But for now, that's it from us. Have a lovely day.